Hi there. I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to our next section of reading Plato's Apology. We This is our third session of it. We're looking today at the Meletus's accusation. I'm going to go a little bit over. This ended up the last section. He talked about the oracle and about why people giving the argument of why the people and everyone else has this general opinion of why he's a troublemaker, why he's Socrates, and he gave an account of his the oracle telling him that none was wiser than he, and challenging the oracle in the sense of trying to show that didn't think believe the oracle is correct, and went about trying to falsify the claim of the oracle. Um, we can argue that the Socratic methods is a negative approach. Socrates' approach of doing something as false, like what Karl Popper would call falsification, takes a claim and tries to find contradictions in the argument, trying to find it does testing it to see if it can survive truth, it can survive challenges, and whether the argument survives or falls. Right. So, the Socratic method is a very negative method. It doesn't posit something that it doesn't. That's not what I say. It doesn't necessarily develop an argument positively in that sense, but rather starts with a claim and then see if it is valid or invalid. Does it hold consistently? Testing the logic of its claim, and whether the claim holds up to uh, 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 challenges. Okay, challenges of evidence, challenges of reasoning, logic, and if it doesn't, it doesn't, if an example of evidence doesn't hold it up, at any point you show that there's contradictions, or the evidence does not support it, then you have to reject it. Okay, and this is basically what Socrates did in that sense. He challenged all the previous um, attempts of understanding the people who had claims of wisdom. Okay, and that's what he did. He went, and he said he went from first the politicians, then the poets, and then the artisans. Right, testing the claim that none was wiser than him, and he found that although the artisans who had some knowledge that he didn't, but overall, but their problem was they made the same mistake as the politician, who the politicians believed and people supported them, and those are the poets. The people suppose the poets have knowledge, whereas they don't have knowledge, but they believe they do. Whereas the artisan does have knowledge, but it's something very technical and very specific and low. But they then make the mistake of thinking that since they have knowledge of that their specific thing, they have a knowledge about higher things as well, and that and they should be listened to, or they have good judgment on these things. And Socrates says, well, no, on the higher things they were no, they wrong, but regarding their things they did have knowledge, and therefore they did have knowledge. But it's not kind of a knowledge that Socrates thought it would that he himself would benefit from in that sense. So therefore, his argument was it's better that I know that I don't know than have a knowledge of something, the knowledge of the artisans. But the problem, but then they take their arrogance and make the same mistake as the politician, and assumes that they have knowledge generally, right? So therefore, this leads us to the accusations, specific accusations of this trial. Remember, the apology is his Socrates' defense speech. We don't see, I'm reminding you, we don't get the actual prosecution per se. We don't get to see the three prosecutors, Metellus, Antyllus, and Lycon, make their case. Now, what we get today is Socrates challenging Metellus, right? And it starts at little. We'll start a little bit at 34a. He says at 34b, at 24b. He ends the other thing about whether you investigate these things later or now, you'll discover this all. But the opinions are why, that he spoke the truth about what he did in his questioning, and they came to because he questioned people who believed they were wise, and then showed that they weren't, and this led people to be angry at them, right? And since they had no other real reason to explain why. They were angry, other than say, being embarrassed. They said, "Well, no, Socrates. How did he prove that you were wrong?" He would say, "Well, by he didn't believe in the gods. The standard, the three standard that he talked earlier above there, right? At paragraph, section 23d, where he talks about those three things. About the things aloft and under the earth, and not believing in the gods, and making the weaker argument the stronger, right? So he goes now. Let's turn to 34, 24. Sorry, 34. Sorry, 24b. So about the things which the first accusers accuse me, let this be sufficient defense before you. Okay, so it is a transition from the first accusers. Now he's going to be turning to these accusers. But against Metellus, the good and patriotic, as he says, and the latter accusers, I will try to speak next in my defense. In other words, he's now going to address Metellus and the others. Right? And Metellus, and he uses the line, the good and patriotic, like inside. This is using his own words, maybe, against him. Right now, again, just as these were. Now again, just as though these were other users, let us take up their sworn statement. It is something like this. It asserts Socrates does injustice by corrupting the young, and by not believing in the gods in whom the city believes, but in utter daimonia that are novel. Okay, so he's introducing new gods into daimonia into the city. Okay, daimonia, I'm going to stop here for a second. We're using West translation of here, Cornell University Press, Vortex and Socrates. Daimonia, the neutral plural of daimonia, which may be translated as demonic things or demonic beings or perhaps divinities, right? The word has been left untranslated wherever he uses it. So it's not translated, he's leaving the Greek. Daimonia are the spirit, a kind of a spiritual force. Lesser gods, not higher gods, but lesser gods. Spirits, in that sense. And in accusing Socrates of introducing new spirits into the city that are novel. Okay. The charges of this sort, again, that's the actual charge. You should see Diogenes of Laertius, book 2, section 40, chapter 40, where Socrates does the actual charge of Socrates does injustice by not believing in the gods whom the city believes in, and by bringing in other daimonia that are novel, and he also does injustice by corrupting the young. So the actual thing is atheism, new gods, youth. Notice Socrates reverses that, right? Socrates says corrupting the young, not believing in the gods. So he switches, Socrates flips the last to first, and then leave the order, right? Uh, 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 but let us examine each one of the parts of this charge. Uh, uh, Now he asserts that I do injustice by corrupting the young. But I, men of Athens, assert that it's Metellus who does injustice, in that he jests in a serious matter, easily bringing human beings to trial, pretending to be serious and concerning about things for which he never cared at all. Now, uh, Socrates is punning that care here, care, never cared. The Greek word here is metili. So he's making fun of Metellus. He's making a pun on Metellus. Now, wait a minute. Doesn't this contradict Socrates' earlier point that he's going to not engage in rhetorical tricks and things? He's just going to let the truth go through here. No, this is a kind of very much a kind of a trick where he is making fun, taking Metellus's name and suggesting that Metellus doesn't care. And in fact, we're using the pun of his name and using his name and the connection between not caring, the similarity between those two, is interesting in that sense. He didn't care at all. He said, "That is that this is so. I will try to display to you as well. Now come here, Metellus. Tell me, you do not regard it as most important how the youth will be best possible." Metellus now responds. Um, now he puts them in brackets here in the text. This is important. The editors puts them in brackets here for us to distinguish it. This is not the original text. It will just be this reported speech like this. So, I do, Metellus says. Socrates, come on, come now. Tell these men who makes them better. For it's clear that you know, since you care at least, for since you have discovered that the one who corrupts them, as you say, namely me, you are bringing me before these men, accusing me, according to the youth, right? But the one who makes them better, come, tell them and reveal to them who it is. Do you see, Metellus? You are silent. You have nothing to say, and yet it does not seem shameful to you and self-sufficient proof of just what I said, that you never really that you never that you have never cared, really cared in that sense. But tell, good man, my good man, who makes them better? Metellus, the laws. Socrates, but I'm not asking this, best of men, but rather what human being is it that who knows first of all the very things, the laws? Metellus, these men, Socrates, the judges. Now, Metellus has a purpose. Metellus is pandering to the jury in that sense. Oh, these men are the knowledge of the laws, right? Okay, this is the thing. He goes, but Socrates replies, what are you saying, Metellus? Are these men here able to educate the young, and do they make them better? Very much so. All of them, or some of them, and some not? All of them. Again, Metellus is pandering to the jury in that sense. All of them going to be. No, that's exaggeration. You get in trouble every time you do that in a Socratic argument. When someone makes a universal claim, therefore, if all is there, then if one is not, then that claim is false, right? That's what the danger of saying everyone or everything. Because if all is true, that means if there's only one who's not, then your claim is not valid. So Socrates is setting him up in the sense that Metellus does not want to give mitigation. He does not want to get. He wants to nail Socrates. He wants to have, and therefore Socrates has to be guilty, and has to be kind of like the. And there's a kind of validity to Socrates' point that Metellus doesn't care about really the youth. He only cares about his reputation, and that his ability to get this major victory of getting Socrates. Um, and he talks about all of them, right? He says, well said, by Hera, and you speak of a great abundance of benefactors. What then, do the listeners here make them better or not? These two again. And what about the councilmen? The councilmen too. And well, Metellus, surely those in the assembly and the assemblymen do not corrupt the youth. Or do all these two make them better? These two. Then all the Athenians, it appears, makes them noble and good, beautiful and good, the kolos agathos, right? Except me, and I alone corrupt them. Is this what you're saying? I do say this most strongly, vehemently, most vehemently. You have charged me with a great misfortune. How now answer me? Does it seem to you to be also Also concerning horses, that all human beings make them better, while one certain one is the corrupter? Or is it wholly opposite of this? That the one certain that one certain one is able to make them better, or a very few, those skilled with horses, while the many, if they ever associate with horses and use them, corrupt them? Is this not so, Metellus, concerning horses and the other animals? The Metellus is not responding. Metellus is I'm not going to answer that. Because Socrates set him a trap, saying, "Well, wait a minute. You're saying that I'm the only one who makes them bad. Everyone, but let's think about horses. When you're going to train horses, does everyone make them better, or only really people trained to make them better make them better?" Of course it is. Altogether so, whether you or Antinous deny or affirm it. For it would be the greatest happiness for the young if one alone corrupts them, while the other benefits them. But in fact, Metellus, you have sufficiently displayed that you never yet gave any thoughts to the young, and that you are making your own lack of care plainly apparent, since you have cared nothing about things for which you bring me here. But tell me further, Metellus, before Zeus, before bringing Zeus as the judge, whether it's better to dwell among upright citizens or villainous ones. Sir, answer, for surely I am asking nothing hard. Do not the villainous do something bad to whomever are nearest them, while the good do something good? Quite so, quite so, because he challenges them and it puts that question that way, and then Metellus goes, yeah, okay, yeah, quite so. Socrates, is there anyone then who wishes to be harmed by those he associate with rather than to be benefited? No, he's saying, what is this? Would people choose to hang out with someone if they're going to be harmed by them? No, they ain't got. The idea is, are human beings rational? Do they know what? Do people pursue what is good for them, or do people don't know what's good for them and choose the bad? Okay, and now he has to. This is a trap in a sense, because if he tries to make the argument that that the many don't really know they're good and can be fooled by tricksters like Socrates, that's an anti-democratic argument, and that's going to piss off the jury, particularly the lower classes and members of the jury up there. Okay, the democratic bias. Therefore, he has to be careful because he's a democracy. He can't make the argument that the many don't know what the hell they're doing and the experts should rule. That's Socrates' position, and that falls into Socrates' trap too, double-sided. If he affirms the validity of the claim, he exposes himself to the position of insulting the many. But if he accepts this, in other words, if he denies and reasserts his claim that the many can know the things better, then he gets into the trap of not being able to answer his question, right? So, uh, 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 is there anyone who wishes to be harmed by those he associates with rather than be benefited? Keep answering, my good man. The law orders you to answer, uh, and is there anyone who wishes? Is there anyone who wishes to be harmed? Oh, of course not. Metellus says, of course not. Okay, come then. Do you bring me here saying that I voluntarily corrupt the young and make them more villainous, or involuntary? Voluntary, I say. Metellus says. What then, Metellus? Are you so much wiser at your age than I at mine, that you have come cognizant that the bad always do something bad to those who are closest to them, and the good do something good? Whereas I have come in, whereas I have come into so much ignorance that I am not even cognizant that I ever do anything wretched to my associates. I will risk getting back something bad from him, so that I do so that I do so much bad voluntary as you assert, or if this or this I am not convinced by you. Of this I am not convinced by you, Medlis, nor do I suppose is any other human being. But either I do not corrupt, or if I do corrupt, I do it involuntary. In both cases, what you say is false. In other words, he's saying that the argument here is he's confronting the thing is do people are people cognizant of harm and bad harm? If you're saying that I'm doing it voluntarily, knowingly, okay. But if I know anyone who does harm to someone is going to get harm back. So you're saying to me, I'm not that, I don't understand that. I who's so old, you're so young, you understand this, but I so old, who doesn't, I'm ignorant of this fact. In other words, he's playing on this common sense attitude that the many jurors are doing out there would have. That you're not gonna. The way to answer Socrates' question is to make the argument of no, what you're doing is dangerous, Socrates. You're teaching the young to make these questions without care of the situation, and what you do is dangerous, Socrates. You're challenging the authoritative opinions. Okay, he could have done this, but then he would have to argue against that the many do not have the ability to know what just is. That the many does not have the capacity to know what the truth in these matters are, and they need to be guided by those who do. Okay, which well, wait a minute. If you make that argument, you're going to piss the jurors off. Okay, and maybe you're the corrupter of the youth, not Socrates. Okay, so this is a fine device he's doing here. He's making him make that he's always the bad guy. He only Socrates the bad guy, and that he does it voluntarily, intentionally. Whereas, wait a minute, but if he does intentionally, wouldn't he? Doesn't he? Isn't Socrates old enough and wise enough or at least common sense enough? He has to be completely an idiot and not realize that people are not going to accept harm being done to them if there's really harm being done to them. Okay, so they would retaliate, or So what's going on here? Okay. Now he continues at 26a, and he basically says that but what he said so far, he's basically kind of shown that his claim is false. Okay. If I now he continues at 26a, a little right there, and if I corrupted involuntarily, the law is not that you bring me in here for such involuntary wrongs, but that you take me aside in private and teach and admonish me. Okay, in other words, he's saying, okay, the voluntary argument, I'm doing it voluntarily, intentionally. It's not that convincing. But maybe I'm doing it involuntarily. But if that's the case, it's not right that you bring me here like you're doing now. You should have came to me privately and admonish me and educate me why I'm doing something wrong, right? This is what Socrates is saying here now. Admonish me. It is clear that for it is clear that if I learn, I will at least stop doing what I do involuntarily. But you avoided associating with me and teaching me, and you were not willing to. But instead, you brought me here, where the law is to bring in those in need of punishing, not of learning. Now, this is interesting. In other words, Socrates flips around, saying, "If I was just doing, if I'm just a nuisance and I don't know what I'm doing, you're arguing that I really know what I'm doing, but and I'm doing it purposely. But if that's the case, I think that's not really that convincing. Okay, in other words, because people wouldn't, you'd have to basically assert that the people don't know what's their good. Okay, and he's not, and Meletus is not going to be willing to do that. So therefore, he doesn't really believe the argument. He's just asserting it, but doesn't really believe the case. If there was a real case here, it would have been involuntary. Involuntary. But you don't bring someone in for an involuntary act here. You'd correct them, right? Because if you only would bring him here if you corrected him and they refused to correct himself. Okay. In other words, if it's involuntary and you don't correct yourself, that becomes evidence of voluntary wrong. Okay. So you don't correct him. You don't, and so he's saying you never bother to come to see me and talk to me and correct me if I'm this bad person you think I am, and da da da. All right, this is where how it ends here, and because this is what the purpose of here is not going to laws, is not being to court, is not to teach people, but rather to punish them. Right. But in fact, men of Athens, what I was saying is already clear that Meletus never cared about these things, either much or little. Nevertheless, speak to us. How do you say that I corrupt the youth, Meletus? Or is it clear, according to the indictment that you brought, that it is by teaching them not to believe in the gods whom the city believes, but in other domina that are novel? Do you not say that it is by teaching these things that I corrupt them? Yeah, now he offers them a way out. Socrates, and this is a trap. Socrates offers a way of saying, "Is it? Aren't you really trying to argue? Aren't you really saying this?" That's a constant trap. Aren't you really putting words in his mouth? And Metellus buys it because it's a way to get Socrates. And this is, I say this most. I certainly do say this most vehemently. Then, before these very gods, Metellus, about whom our speech is now, speak to me and to these men still more plainly. For I am not able to understand whether you are saying that I teach them to believe that there are gods of some sort, and so I myself do believe that there are gods, and not completely atheistic, and I do not do injustice in this way, but that I do not believe in those that the city believes, but in others. And this is what you charge me with, that I believe in others? Or do you assert that I myself do not believe in gods at all and that I teach this to others? He offers them, he's saying, wait a minute, you can't get away. If you're saying that I don't believe in gods, I'm atheistic, but I'm teaching people about different gods, you can't, if I'm teaching other gods, then I'm not atheistic. So it's either one or the other. I'm atheistic or not atheistic. So he offers three solutions. He offers him the big three choices. Do you? But I do not believe in the city gods. I believe in others. Or do you assert that I do not believe in gods at all and I teach this to others? Okay. So I myself do believe that the gods, and am not completely atheistic, and do not do injustice with it. But I believe in but I do not believe in those whom the city believes in. Right, that's right. But others, that's right. So I'm wrong in that. He's often. Am I wrong only in that I'm not atheistic, but I just believe in other gods, or am I atheistic and you're contradicting yourself? And then he says, or do I not believe in gods and I really teach others not to believe in gods, right? And Metellus says, this is what I say, that you do not believe in gods at all. So, wondrous Metellus, why do you say this? Do I not believe then that the sun and moon are gods, as other human beings do? No, by Zeus, judges, since he declares that the sun is stone and the moon is earth. Socrates replies, do you suppose that you are accusing Anaxagoras, the pre-Socratic philosopher, my dear Metellus? Do you suppose you're accusing him? You suppose that Anaxagoras is here? I'm Socrates, not Anaxagoras. Uh, and why do you despise these men here? Suppose that they are so inexperienced in letters that they do not know that the books of Anaxagoras of Clamies are full of these speeches. Moreover, do the young men learn these things from me when it is possible for them to buy them at the orchestras for a drachma if the price is very high, and then to laugh at Socrates if he pretends that they were his own, especially since they are no so strange? But before Zeus, is this how I seem to you? Do you believe that? Do I believe that there's no God? Certainly, you do not, by Zeus, not in any way at all. In other words, he's saying you're an atheist. You don't believe in God at all. Oh, Socrates replies, you are unbelievable, Meletus. Even as you seem to me, even as you seem to me to yourself. In other words, unbelievable. This man seems to me, men of Athens, to be very hubristic and unrestrained, and simply to have brought this indictment with a certain kind of hubris and unrestraint with youthful rashness. He's accusing Meletus of being this ambitious, arrogant, rash actor, bringing this charge completely unjustifiably to this, and that he's going to point this thing here. In other words, and have brought this indictment with a certain hubris and unrestraint and useful rashness. He is like someone testing me by putting together a riddle. Will Socrates the wise recognize that I am jesting and contradicting myself? Or will I deceive him and the rest of the listeners? Now, Socrates is mocking him at this point, okay? For he himself appears to me to be contradicting himself in this indictment. As he were saying, Socrates does injustice by not believing in the gods, but believing in gods. Yet this is yet this is the conduct of one who jokes. In other words, Socrates is saying, he's basically saying the accusation, excuse me, is that I don't believe in gods, but I believe in gods. That's a joke. He's making fun of the whole, hey, jurors, he's mocking you. He thinks you're stupid. Okay, right? This is, Socrates is kind of, picking up. Now, consider with me, men of Athens. Sorry. Now, consider with me, men, how he appears to me to be saying this. And you answer us, Meletus. But you others, as I begged you from the beginning, please remember to not make disturbances if I make the speech in my accustomed way. I talks to Meletus, is there any human being, Meletus, who believes that there are human matters but do not believe in human beings? Let him keep answering, men. Let him not make disturbances. Let him not make disturbances again and again. Is there anyone who does not believe in horses but believes in horse matters? Or anyone who does not believe in flute players but believes in flute makers? He's like he's in other words, Meletus refusing to engage in Socrates here. And Socrates keeps on, saying, oh, "What about this? What about this? Is there someone who believes in human being, but don't believe in other words, he starts out with this idea: is there any human being who believes that there are human matters but does not believe in human beings? Okay, then he flips it. Does not believe. Is there anyone who does not believe in horses but believes in horse matters? Anyone does not believe in flute players but believes in flute makers? There is not, best of men, Socrates says. But if you do not wish to answer, I say it is for you, and I say it for you and for these others. But at least answer what comes next. Is there anyone who believes that there are demonic matters but does not believe in daimons? There is not. How helpful, yes, there is not. How helpful of you by answering reluctantly when compelled by these men. Now then, will you say that I believe in and teach a daimonia? So whether they are novel or ancient in any rate, do I believe in daimonia according to your speech? And also, and you also swore, as you also swore in the indictment. In other words, I repeat this. Now, he goes, now you're helpful, reluctantly, right? Now then, you say that I believe in and teach daimonia. So whether they are novel or ancient, at least any rate, I do believe in daimonia according to your speech, and also you also swore this in the indictment. But if I believe in daimonia, then surely there is also a great necessity that I believe in daemons. Is this not so? No, Midlis is not saying. Of course it is. I set you down in agreement since you do not answer. And so, do we not believe daemons are either gods or children of gods? Do you affirm this or not? Quite so. So you put them in a spot. Yeah, the gods, the children of God. This is the orthodox understanding of the Greeks. The daemons are gods or children of gods, right? Quite so. Therefore, if I do believe in daemons, as you say, and if this, on the other hand, diamonds are gods or some sort, then this would be that would be what I say you're riddling and jesting about when you say that I do not believe in gods. And again, I do believe in gods, since in fact I do believe in daemons. In other words, Socrates kind of pokes fun of him at this sense. He pokes fun of him in that sense. Uh, He goes, now he continues. On the other hand, if daemons are certain bastard children of gods, whether from the nips or the others, or from certain others to whom it also said they are born, then what human being would believe that there are children of gods but not gods? It would be as strange as if someone believed in children of horses or asses, mules, but did not believe that there are horses and asses. Okay, right? This is the idea I had. In other words, if children of God exist, then gods must exist. Mules exist, but therefore a horse. I'm sorry. If mules exist, then horses and asses must exist, right? Right. But Metellus, there is no way that you did not bring this indictment either to test us in these things, or else because you were at a loss about what true injustice you might charge me with. In other words, you didn't do this because you brought this thing here not because you were at loss to what no unjust. No, let me read this. But Metellus, there is no way that you did not bring this indictment, either to test us in these things, or else you were at a loss about what true just injustice you might charge me with. There is no device by which you could persuade any human being who is even slightly intelligent, that there is not a part of the same man who believes in daimonia and divine things, and further that this same man believes in neither daemons nor gods nor heroes. Now, Socrates concludes with this complex flourish, right? West says in note 48 on the bottom here. The last sentence means if someone believes in demonic, I'm quoting West here, in daimonia, demonic things, he must also believe in thea, the divine things. Further, the same man must also believe in demos, gods, and heroes. Heroes are demigods or half gods, children of the mortal, one mortal and the other divine parent. Socrates adds heroes here to prepare his introduction to the demigod of Achilles, son of the goddess Thesis, and the mortal Peleus. On heroes and daemons, West says, go see Crito, right, where Socrates presents the account of the apology more in a more playful manner than he does here. But again, this is where he ends. Now, it is at this point we're going to stop. We will stop at this point because this is where I broke up in the schedule 28A. We will return to talk about Metellus, continue Metellus' his criticism of Metellus, and about this question. And Well, if you have any questions to this, please put them in the blocks below. If you like what I've said, please hit the like button. Again, put questions. If you want to subscribe, if you want to do subscribe, the background, the police in the background must have accent. But if you like what I want to hear more of these things, please subscribe. Please follow me on social media if you want to see what's going on. Take care and have a nice day.